Love it. So I did want to back up a couple steps. If you guys came to church normally and you missed last week or missed emails and communication, Mike is moving on, still being King of Kings, still here, thankfully, in a new ministry role where he gets to oversee and pour into a lot of the people on staff that run ministries. And so we're so thankful that in this transition, he's not gone. He's just down the hall. And I will move into Mike's role of director of students. And so we're having a search for the right person to fill my role. And how many of you have jobs? A couple of you. So most of you did an interview to get that job, right? Where you talk and you sit awkwardly and you wear your tie. And this is kind of like a really big interview. So we've had sit downs with Nathan and gotten to know his story and who he is. We've called people that know him well and asked all about all his dirty laundry, and they said it's super clean. And so this is kind of the next piece, because we want to make sure that this isn't just a good fit for a job, but it's a good fit culturally, and that you guys feel comfortable. And so this is kind of that time where we're going to get to know a little bit of Nathan's story, and then you guys get to ask questions. And so Kyle put my number up. So text me as he's talking. Text me as you think of questions, because we're going to dive in deeper to that after this. So Nathan will come up in a second and share that, just kind of a chunk of his story. But we're kind of familiar. We both went to Concordia, Texas, which is awesome. We have a lot of people in common. And so it wasn't a total stranger as we started this process, which is really fun. People keep asking Mike and I, why do you keep taking from Texas? But we know people in Texas. We trust people in Texas. Not that we don't trust Nebraskans. But when someone you know and trust says, this person's good, it's reassuring. And barbecue, yeah, right. So know that this person coming up isn't a complete stranger. We vetted him well, and we're excited to continue this process. So Nathan, you want to come up and share just a little bit about you and Taylor and y'all's life and how you got here?
Hello. Am I on? There we go. Y'all can sing. Like, dang, y'all's worship is amazing. That was incredible to be a part of. So thanks for inviting me and my wife and letting us just come in and see how y'all do worship here on Sundays. But just to get a little bit more of my story, I was born in California. Has anybody ever been to California before? Yeah. So California, and then my story where I've lived, it was California, and then we went to Texas, and then we went to Georgia. So my entire life has been south of all this cold wind. So this is quite a shock to my little small body being in this cold of weather, but it's really cool to see King of Kings. I've heard about King of Kings like most of my life, grew up in the Lutheran church, so it's really cool to see and put faces with what I've heard about for so long. But grew up in California until I was about 7. My dad's a pastor in the Lutheran church, and he took a call when we were 7 to move from California to Texas. And for my little 7-year-old brain, like, it destroyed me, because I'm like, I'm losing all my friends and I'll never make more. But it was totally fine. It was okay. We moved to Texas and grew up going there. And part of my story is that all throughout like my young life, I don't know if any of y'all have ever experienced this before or know what this is kind of like, but I never knew what relationship with Jesus was. I didn't know that that was something that he wanted with me. I just thought that I was supposed to like go to church and do the church thing and like know the right answers from like confirmation class and just be able to like regurgitate like we kind of do in school and in classes. So I never feel like I had a relationship with the Lord. I know that he was always there and pursuing me, but I really didn't have much of a faith life. And you can tell that I don't know the book of Lamentations, so I really don't know that much about the Bible apparently. But I grew up in Texas and then went to school at Texas Tech University, Reckham Tech. Anybody in here want to go to Texas Tech? Okay, good. Don't. It's terrible. It's just massive like dust storms that come through and you can't see anything. So started at Texas Tech, and again, my relationship with God just like wasn't present. I wasn't about God. I wasn't pursuing him. I was in fact chasing all the other things in the world that you could chase, and just didn't know what that was like. But then God worked really powerfully in my life and created an opportunity for me to work at this camp in Texas called Camp Lone Star. Maybe you've heard that name before. I don't know, but it's this little small camp in LaGrange, Texas. And I went out to camp as a counselor. I had no idea what was going on. Never had been a counselor before. Never had really hung out with like groups of kids like that. And I got there and Jesus met me like hardcore. Jesus like wrecked my life. He totally broke down my walls and my heart. He showed me what it meant to have a relationship with him, and that was the first time I had ever heard that before. So I was finally like experiencing him for I feel like what was the first time in my life. He just showed me his grace and how good of a father that he is. And so he worked in my life at Camp Lone Star, and it was just awesome. And it was at Camp Lone Star where he showed me that, like, man, I really love working with kids of all ages and just being around them and getting to mentor them and love on them and play games with them. We played 9 Square. I have never seen the entire 9 Square collapse like it just did, so y'all go hard on 9 Square. And so then worked at Camp Lone Star. And then I went back to Texas Tech, and it really wasn't a great time to go back to Texas Tech. My faith was like really young, and I was reading my Bible for the first time because I wanted to. And that was really weird for me. Like I'd never wanted to read the Bible before, like Lamentations and stuff. And I'm like waking up like, I should look at Lamentations. Like, what is this? What's happening right now? And so then God spoke, and he told me that I should go learn to be a DCE at Concordia in Texas. Whoosh. And so I transferred to Concordia at Texas. That was where I met my beautiful wife, Taylor. And as soon as she saw me, she knew she had to lock me down because, wow. So she was just all about me, all crazy. I couldn't keep her away from me. It's quite the opposite. But went to Concordia. Amanda and I, we didn't quite cross paths, so she kind of graduated a little bit before me. And so I was at Concordia, learned to be a DCE, and that was really exciting, fun time in my life. God just putting really cool community around me, growing in my faith and in my love for him. And then after Concordia finished up, I moved out to Peachtree City, Georgia, which is where I currently am, St. Paul Lutheran Church and School in Peachtree City, Georgia. It's like 30 minutes south of Atlanta. And kind of what I do there, my job title is the Minister to Children and Youth. So I oversee just like all ages of kids. We have a school that operates day to day there. So it's 1-year-old all the way to 8th grade middle school. And so I get to do different things there. I started kind of like a man class for the 7th and 8th grade boys. We talk about what does it mean to be a man? What does that look like? We like made marshmallow guns last week because that's what men do, I guess. So that's really, really fun. I get to lead chapels, worship for our middle school kids. I teach confirmation. I get to preach occasionally on Sundays. So it's really, really fun. I love being a part of the school and the ministry there. So, and then here I am a few weeks ago, just chilling in my office on the phone with my cousin, who Mike White knows and Amanda knows. And I'm telling my cousin, I'm like, dude, I don't know. I just feel like a change is coming. I don't know what God is trying to tell me and Taylor. We don't know like where he wants us to go in these coming months. Like we're just not sure what's next. And I kid you not, in the middle of this phone call, I'm sitting at my desk and I get an email from Amanda White from King of Kings going, hey, what do you think about Omaha? And I'm like, okay, God, what is this all about? So just a really cool connection how this all started. But yeah, I'm an open book, would love to share any more about my story, but that's kind of like the short version of what God's been doing in my life as of late.
Sweet. You want to grab that chair? And
Absolutely.
We got some questions coming in. You guys don't be shy. If more questions, I got a lot here, but the limits, are endless. Sorry, Keith, I'm going to take your music stand. All right. I feel like one of the ones that came to mind first for me before they started pouring in text-wise is why students? Like what about students kind of grabs your heart?
Yeah, so as I'm like looking out at all of you, the way I would say it is I don't see like the church of tomorrow. I don't think that you guys are going to be the church of tomorrow. I think you're the church of today. I think that each one of you has been called by Jesus to be an influencer in his kingdom, and not just for clout, like with your friends, but clout for the kingdom of God. And so I think that he's called each one of you to use the influence you have with your friends, with your with coworkers if you have a job, or with your team if you're playing athletics, wherever it is that God has called you. He's like put you there for a very specific reason, and it's not an accident that you have the friends that you have. Because I believe that he wants you to influence the kingdom for him. And so I love being a part of your journey and your story and equipping you. How can I be a resource for you? But also, how can I love and support you in wherever it is that God is calling you? I just love seeing the young in the kingdom of God Like, man, Kyle coming up to me, like, as soon as I walk in, he's like, oh, I'm Kyle. Let me show you the sound booth and where everything is. And then Kim's like, oh, let me show you this stuff. Like, what's the name of the girl that was singing up here and playing the keys and hit the F sharp? What's her name?
Hannah.
Holy cow, Hannah. The vocals on you are incredible. Like, I love seeing that in youth, that this isn't just like a game for adults. This is what God is doing with all nations and all tribes and all tongues. So I think that's why I really love students.
It's awesome. So adults probably know Mike and I are also DCEs, but we don't use that term with students much. So a student asks, what's a DCE?
Yeah, so DCE, I'm not a super fan of the word. It stands for Director of Christian Education. And it literally means nothing because it could be any number of different things at a church. It could be someone that helps out with kids ministry, middle school ministry, children's ministry. It could be someone that just oversees confirmation. So my title at St. Paul is Minister to Children and Youth. So just any kind of children or youth age kids, I'm just helping to minister them in their journey.
Yeah, it's good. So a back-to-back question centered around Texas. So Mike is very vocal about his love for the country, the great country of Texas. And so someone said, is Texas that great? And someone else said, will you talk about Texas as much as Mike does?
Oh, man. Let me tell you which parts of Texas aren't great. The UT campus is not great at Texas.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Just kidding. I have nothing to say about UT. Texas is great. I'm probably not going to talk about it as much as Mike does. What was the first part of the question?
Is Texas that great, and will you talk about it as much as it is?
I mean, Texas is great if you love to shoot things like out in the wild and like carry guns on you at all times. So if that's what you love to do, then Texas is really great. I was telling someone else, it was crazy because like Mike's son Noah was playing basketball in like Iowa last night, and that's like a weird thing to hear, like, oh, he was a state over. But if you drive like 5 hours, you can get to this city from Omaha. If you drive 7 hours, you can get to here. If you drive 7 hours in Texas, you're in Texas. Like, it's huge. So if you love big out open doors, then it's for you. But if not, you probably won't like it. I don't know.
That's awesome. Is there a time when you like really knew that you wanted to go into ministry? I know you had a little bit of that calling moment, but like, was there a clarification when it was like, oh, it's definitely student ministry, or is it ministry in general?
Yeah. I would say that it was definitely when, like, the season and chapter of my life when I was working at Camp Lone Star. I've always had, as I look back on my life, like, I've always had an affinity for working with people who are younger than me. Like, I can even remember back to when I was in 6th grade, and at my private school, we did this thing where, like, if you had good enough behavior, you could, like, rack up these points, and you could, like, spend the points on something. It could be, like, going out to lunch with the teacher, or you get, like, a free dress down day or whatever. And, like, one option that nobody chose was you could go hang out with the kindergartners for the day. And I was like, man, I want to go hang out with the kindergartners. So I, like, went on a field trip with the kindergarten kids. And so I look back and I'm like, man, I've always had this love for, like, being with those who are younger than me. But it really wasn't until I got to Camp Lone Star that being a counselor for, like, 8-year-olds or high schoolers for a week, I'm like, man, I really love being a part of students' life. So I think that would be kind of the moment where God was like, hey, this is how I've kind of wired you.
That's awesome. Really, really deep, important question. Chick-fil-A or Cane's?
Chick-fil-A.
Ooh, that was quick. My age-old question is, ¿por qué no los dos? Why not both, people? I don't know why we have to put these against each other. What's your favorite thing about middle schoolers? What's your favorite thing about high schoolers?
Okay. Middle school, I love the energy. And I love that most of the time there's not enough awareness to be like, oh, this is going to make me look like a fool. You just go for it, and nobody really cares. Yeah. So I love the energy, and I love just going for it. And then high school, I love the, like, I realize I'm too cool for this, so I'm not going to do it. But I really want to do it. And so maybe I will do it. And then you just jump in and do it, and it's like, man, we knew you had it in you all along, so... yeah, I don't even know if that makes any sense. I think I just spoke a lot of gibberish, but that's what came out.
It's good. No, it's good. Do you have a secret talent?
Do I have a secret talent?
You can do a really good anime voice.
Oh my gosh. No, I can't.
Oh, I think we need to see the really good anime or here.
I don't know what she's talking about. I've never done that in my entire life. What are you talking about?
It's awesome. What's the most surprising thing about leading students or being in ministry?
Did you say surprising?
Yeah.
I would say the most surprising thing is how satisfying it is and how awesome being a part of a moment when the light bulb goes on. So like whether it's during like teaching or small group or prayer, like wherever it might be, seeing like the light bulb click for someone where they really like get the gospel, or you really like understand, like it's more than just like head knowledge, but you realize like this is actually about me. Like God legitimately wants me, and seeing that connection be made is so like satisfying to see and to be a part of. It makes it all worth it.
It's awesome. This one is from Mike White. It's a classic question. Do you scrunch or fold your toilet paper?
Fold.
Fold, classic.
I love Jesus.
Do you have a favorite NFL team?
I usually cheer for the team that like everybody else in the room is not cheering for. So like,
I like
if
that.
people are like cheering for the Chiefs, I'm like, let's go. What was the other team? 49ers.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions that involve Taylor. So if you would like to come take a seat, I don't want you to feel like you're on the other side. 2 questions specifically. Can you share a bit more of your love story, and what's your opinion on kind of coming here, like following him, if that makes sense?
Oh, what great questions. You should tell the love story. I'll tell the other one. Okay, so following Nathan, that's such a great question, because if you know me, what? You're good. Okay. If you know me, I am a very driven person. I'm the oldest of 3, and I'm an extreme like trailblazer. Okay, so I left Southern Illinois, where I grew up, outside St. Louis. Go Cardinals! And I moved to Texas. I went to school at Concordia, which was a big deal because nobody leaves my small town. And then after college, I went on the world race, which Amanda and I have in common. And so after that, like, I came back and I knew I was going to move to Georgia because Nathan and I were going to engage soon. And thus began this really difficult process of my heart being extremely softened. And it's really hard for me to follow anyone, but I think kind of submitting to a plan that's not really one that I choose, and kind of just having to trust the Lord in. And that is what a lot of this process is like, man, this is all about Nathan's job and Nathan's calling, but I'm going to get to be a part of that in a really cool and different way. But yeah, it's been a learning curve.
So let me tell you the real story of how the love began. Okay, so I am working at Camp Lone Star, right? And I'm a counselor. And we have like this thing for high schoolers called JS. It just means junior staff. And so like high schoolers come in for a week and they like volunteer and stuff. And those lines are never supposed to be crossed. That's like super bad. So I'm a counselor, and one of the final weeks at camp, like I noticed this girl in JS, and she's like really cute. And I'm like, wow, that girl's like really cute. And she's a JS, so I will never like talk to her ever or make any kind of eye contact or anything like that. So I'm just like, okay, stay in my lane. She's cute. Like, praise Jesus. Like, bless her, Jesus. Like, let her, whatever. And so we finish up camp, and I go back to Texas Tech. Well, while I'm at Texas Tech that final semester, God speaks to me, and he's like, dude, you're going to go to Concordia. And so I'm like, cool. I decide to go to Concordia, and once I had like made that decision, I was like, man, okay, so this is a real thing. I was going to be living with my cousin, Josh, who was one of Mike White's high schoolers when he was at Point of Grace in Texas. And so Josh, my cousin, we're going to be roommates. And it's around like early December at this time. And I'm thinking, Josh is going to be my roommate. And so his friend group is probably going to be like my friend group. So I'm going to do a little Facebook stalking and just kind of see what they look like. And at this time, Josh and his friends, their own little like family, they had taken family Christmas photos. And so I get on Facebook and I'm looking at the family photos, and guess who's in the picture? That really cute girl from camp who was in college. And I'm like, yup, gonna date her because she's gorgeous. So I get to Concordia. It's the second day that I'm there, and a good friend of mine named Adam is like, dude, Nathan, we're going to go out, celebrate your birthday, and I want you to meet this girl before we go. Her name's Taylor. And I'm like, oh, I know who Taylor is. And so he takes me up to Taylor's room, and he's like, "What's up, Taylor? Hi." He's like, "Oh, this is Nathan." Taylor's like, "Hi, I'm Taylor." I'm like, "I'm your future husband. I'm Nathan." And I didn't actually say that, but that's what I was thinking. And so then, like, we're just kind of hanging out in the room, blah, blah, blah. And then Adam's like, "Okay, cool, we're going to go celebrate Nathan's birthday." So we start going. We're driving in Adam's car, and we're going down the road, and Adam, like, looks over at me, and he's like, "So?" And I'm like, "So?" He goes, "Taylor." I'm like, "Taylor?" He's like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to try to date her." And I'm like, "No! Darn it." But praise be to God, that was not a part of the plan. It didn't work out, and we ended up becoming really great friends and dating. So that's kind of how it started.
And all that went over my head. I had no idea that was happening. And when Nathan asked me on a date, I was like, interesting. Sure. Like, didn't even know about it.
Follow-up question, how long have you guys been married?
Less than a year. April 28th, 2019. So we're coming up on a year.
It's awesome.
Feels like 5.
There's a lot of questions surrounding Husker football. One, will you drink the Kool-Aid and become a Husker fan? But a follow-up, if you usually root against the team that everyone roots for, will you root against Husker Nation?
I don't think I would root against you. I'd probably cheer for the Huskers. Because, I mean, nothing's more intimidating than a corn husk. So
A corn husker.
I have to jump on that bandwagon. Oh, it's the person that's doing the corn husking?
Yes, I believe, as a newcomer as well.
Is there like a specific attire that they wear when they do that? Like, are they wearing overalls or? Okay.
That's a good question. Man, what's the best trip you've ever been on? Vacation or trip?
Oh, man. The honeymoon was in St. Lucia, and it was nice.
There's like a sigh from the group. They're like, beaches, what are those?
Oh, man. All-inclusive resorts? What is that? It was so great.
You guys ask your parents. They know more about that. So you talked about God kind of speaking to you in your story. Tell us more about that. Like, how did you know it was him? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, so it's crazy because, like, you read in the Bible, like, especially more like Old Testament, when God just, like, speaks to someone, like, who's it? Samuel is, like, asleep at night, and he like, hears God's voice, and he, like, wakes up, and he's like, what was that? There's really only been, like, a couple times in my life maybe where I felt like I heard the audible voice of God, so don't feel, like, unspiritual if you've never heard, like, the voice of God, and you're like, oh, I know who that is. But I feel like usually the Holy Spirit, we're told, lives inside of us when we have faith. And so I think that what he does more often is he gives thoughts that maybe like you like recognize this thought happens. And you're like, I wouldn't normally think that. So I'm in my dorm room at Texas Tech, and I'm just on the computer, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, I just got this thought of, what about a DCE, a director of Christian education? And that would have never come from me. Like, I was not thinking that. I was not in a place in my life where I was considering that. Like, I never would have had that thought. So I can only credit to the Holy Spirit being like, Nathan, I think it's time for you to look at this. And so that was when he spoke to me, and I started to kind of research what it would look like from there.
That's awesome. What's something you'd want to do with the student body here, like events or games or mission trips, something that you'd want to like kind of pioneer?
That's a good question. It's interesting to come into like y'all seem like y'all have some really cool things already happening with what Mike and Amanda and the student leadership is already doing here. So it's hard, not in like a comparison way, but thinking about where we're at St. Paul, like, we're just nowhere near this kind of level. So some of the stuff we're doing is like baby steps compared to kind of things that y'all are doing. But I would just love to see kind of what Pastor Greg's been talking about in the Vision series and where are we going in the future here at King of Kings. And I always talked about how we really want to ask the question, if King of Kings were to disappear like today, would the community even really care or know? And not just like the Christian community, but the community at large. So I would want to be a part of any kind of initiative that helps to empower and equip you to go into the community and into your schools and actually make a difference for the kingdom, not just to other Christians, but to people that really, really need the gospel and really need to know that there is hope in Jesus Christ and that their identity isn't in the sport that they play, but it's in the King that made them.
That's good. What do y'all's hobbies look like? What do you do for fun in your free time?
We eat sushi. We love Disney. Anybody a big Disney fan in here? Star Wars, all that? Oh, yeah. We love Disney. We follow all their stuff. We're going to go there in March. We love to be outdoors. So that's going to be hard. We love going on walks and hikes and bike rides and
Just
runs.
more layers.
And
It's still possible.
yeah,
just a
more
few
layers, we can do it.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Midwest, so pray for Nathan. But I'm trying to think what else. We love Mexican food. It's all about food, I guess.
Yeah. Any highlights, like favorite TV or kind of music you guys are into?
Like Stranger Things. I'm trying to think.
Wait, what did you say, Mandy? You said favorite?
Like TVs or TV shows or music, movies.
Oh yeah. I mean, we love worship, any kind of worship music stuff. Yeah, we watch. We blew through The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Anybody got Disney Plus? Oh my gosh, so good. So yeah, anything Star Wars, we love it. I watched Friends the first time with Taylor, so I don't know if there's any Friends fans in here.
Not one. Follow-up question, what is your daily hair routine?
My daily hair routine?
Yeah, you could both answer, but I
Okay.
think it was geared towards you.
I woke up like this, so
Lie.
no, I just take a shower and then use a comb.
Wow.
That's
It's possible,
it.
guys. All in the haircut. Heard it from Taylor first. What role has missions played in your life? Yeah. Mission trips.
Me? Okay. I love missions. I have known from a young age that I was called to anyone and everyone. And so what I mean by that is, like, I don't have a problem interacting with any kid, adult, language, whatever. And so I really enjoy missions, whether that's in the neighborhood next to mine or across the globe. So like I said, I went on a year-long mission trip. It's called the World Race, where I went to 11 countries in 11 months. And it was really hard, but it was really good because I got to see so many cultures and tribes and languages and nations and just different ways to kind of present the gospel, which has really changed my faith and really changed the way I kind of get to talk about Jesus and what he's done. When you sit, this is like a dramatic example, but when you sit under one tree in this desert in Africa and you talk about Genesis 1, like where they literally have nothing, like the dust becomes like valuable because it's like God formed us from the dust. They're like, pick it up. It's like so cool. So I love missions. I will go anywhere and everywhere to talk about Jesus. So that has played a huge part in my life, and I'm eager to do more of it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. When Nathan and I started dating, he pretty quickly told me, he's like, well, I don't really feel called to do that, so we're not going to live in Africa. And I'm like, okay. So that has been a good balance, I would say, in our relationship.
Yeah, no, for me, I've never actually been on an out-of-country mission trip before, and that's just, I haven't had the opportunity to really do that. I've been on a couple mission trips. One was in St. Louis, and another was in Houston, so I've not ventured out of the country on a mission trip yet, so I'm excited to do that.
Yeah. Have you ever taken kids on a trip?
I've not on a mission trip, or
Yeah.
just like anywhere or whatever?
Mission trip, yeah.
Not on a mission trip, no.
Okay, not yet. What weighs more, a ton of feathers or a ton of steel?
A ton of feathers or a ton of steel? I would say both.
Good answer. What's like an area of weakness or something you really want to grow in right now?
I'm a pretty humble person, so that was a joke. Oh my gosh. I think that anybody in here know like what the Enneagram is? Yeah, anybody know what number they are? 22. Wow, that's
good.
that's an interesting number. I am a 1, which I know nothing about the Enneagram other than that's just the perfectionist. So I think for me, a big weakness of mine is my expectation for myself is like really, really hard to a point that could be like really self-deprecating or like just puts me kind of in this isolation to where I'm not living up to the potential that I think God has called me to because I'm so like hard and just like cutting the rug out from underneath me super often. So I think I don't have a really healthy outlook on myself at times or the gifts that God has given me. So I would say that that's a big weakness that I would love to overcome. I'm not sure what the road forward for that looks like, though.
Thanks for sharing that. What's a highlight of ministry for you so far?
I know I mentioned it earlier, but my man class with the 7th and 8th grade boys, we call it the Watchmen. It's so much fun. Like, we get together twice a week, and I just love getting to like lead those boys and just do different things with them. So it's always a huge highlight to get together with them and to hear them. I actually had. It was kind of cool. A couple years ago, we would talk about the principles of manhood, and there were 4 principles. And we moved on to like other kind of stuff now. But at the time, I had printed off these little like pieces of paper with all the principles, and I laminated them, and I put them in the boys' lockers so they could see them every day and be reminded of like, these are the standards I want to live by in my life. And that was like 2 years ago or so. The other day we're in Watchmen, and the brother of one of those watchmen was in there. Tyler is his name. And they're sitting in front of me, and we're waiting for the 8th graders to come in. And Tyler has his Bible, and he's flipping it around. And in the front like cover of his Bible, I see this like green laminated piece of paper. And I'm like, wait, what is that? I was like, Tyler, what's that in the front of your Bible? And he's like, oh, and he like opens it up, and sure enough, it's that little laminated paper that has the manhood principles. And he's like, oh, I think this was something that my grandpa like made for Robbie and now has been kind of passed down to me. And of course, in that moment, I didn't want to take that away from him, but I was like, oh, dude, that's so cool. Like, that's awesome. But that was such a special moment for me to see that something that I gave to them had been passed down and was like significant and special to him. So I really love being a part of that.
That's awesome. We have a couple requests for the anime voice. We're not going to bully you into that. But if it's on your heart,
you have to give me like a phrase or a sentence, and I just say it in like.
Okay, how about
anime.
my favorite color is whatever your favorite color is.
All right, I can't look at y'all when I do it.
This is great. You're getting bonus points for this.
What color should I pick?
Red. I don't know.
Quit looking at me. I can't do it. My favorite color is red. That's not very good. That's not very good.
It was great. Oh man, that was awesome. This question is really, really interesting. Have you ever felt alone in life? Were you ever alone in life? How did you deal with that?
So a part of that story of me working at Camp Lone Star and then going back to Texas Tech, I kind of mentioned that was a really hard season in my life because at that point in my life, I had a really not good community. We were doing things and a part of things that just weren't good for us, weren't honoring of God in any way, shape, or form. And so I worked at camp, and being there, God shined the light kind of on my sin and things in my life that weren't good. And so I knew and had made the decision at camp, when I go back to Tech, I'm going to just cut all those things out. Like, I'm going to cut out the things that don't honor God. I'm going to cut out the bad community and just not be a part of that anymore. And so I went back to Tech, and I just like with an axe, just like hacked it all away. So just didn't associate with the community anymore, wasn't hanging around the same circles. But the problem was I didn't have enough wisdom at the time to know that I can't just remove all those things and not fill them with something that is good and honoring of the Lord. So I got rid of all my community, but I didn't seek out another community, and I didn't have a good like safety net or fallback. So it was extremely lonely during my junior year at Texas Tech. Basically, my day looked like going to class and then coming back and shutting myself up in my room and playing Borderlands for like 4 hours a day, which for some of the dudes might sound really awesome. It's not when that's all you do for like 3 months. So it was extremely lonely. Slipped into a little bit of depression during that time just because it was like everything was crumbling around my community. I was a psychology major, and there's nothing wrong with psychology. But for me, I knew that he was calling me to something different. And so it was like, well, psychology was the only thing I wanted to study. So now it's like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing? What's my purpose? It had just all been kind of ripped away from me. So I would say it was a very, very lonely time, for sure.
That's good. How have you reached those far from Jesus in Atlanta?
Say that again.
How have you reached those far from Jesus in Atlanta?
That's a good one. So we have kind of a unique opportunity at we're in an interesting area because we're not in Atlanta. We're like 30 minutes south of Atlanta, and it's a really, really nice like area. It's very like it's well kept. And usually what happens is a lot of people that work for the airline, Delta's main airport is out in Atlanta. It's like the busiest airport in the world. So a lot of like Delta executives or big time pilots, they go up and work, and then they drive down to Peachtree City, and they're like living in their house in Peachtree City. So it's a really nice area. So it's a different kind of farness from God. It's not like, there's not a lot of homeless people in the area, or ones you might typically think like, oh, that person might be far from God. It's like people in your everyday or at the grocery store or whatever that it's also a really heavily churched area. So a lot of people go to church, but not a lot of people have a relationship with Jesus or really know what that looks like. But we have a unique opportunity because of our school that we have 200 kids every day that are coming like right there on site that I'm pretty heavily involved with. So I get the really cool opportunity to be with the kids, but also to reach their parents through some of the things that we do. So it's been really cool through some of the things like Watchmen to see some of the kids get really interested, and they're coming to different things like worship on Sunday, and they're bringing their parents. And so we're getting to connect with the parents and getting to minister to them. So that's one of the ways I would say.
That's good. For both you guys, what's the best part of being married?
I would say, so Nathan and I's relationship, we were seriously best friends, which I don't super agree with girl and guy best friends, because I think girls need to have their girlfriends, But Nathan and I were really, really, really good friends, and our relationship was founded on such a strong friendship that that's just how our relationship has always been romantic, and before it was romantic, it's just always been fun to be with each other. And so I would say being married is awesome because you get to live life with your best friends. So we joke around a lot, and we get to do the things that we love together because we have those common interests. And I would just say making decisions, even though that has been hard for me, following and kind of coming alongside someone, it's been really cool to know I don't have to make those decisions alone, and I'm not taking big leaps or big, steps outside of what I'm currently doing by myself anymore. Like when I went on the world race, I didn't know anybody. Now I'm like, okay, wherever we go next, I at least know one person really well. So it works out.
Yeah, and I would say on that theme of knowing someone really well, that it's crazy. We kind of joke, or Taylor will say, Nathan, I know you better than you know yourself. And I'm like, girl, please, you don't know me. This is me. But the truth is, she knows me better than I know me. And so it's been really helpful because, in all honesty, our first year of marriage has been, really hard. There's just been a lot of circumstances and things going on in our life. And then just all different areas in our life that have been really hard and put a lot of pressure on our relationship. And so there's been times when I literally just, don't even know what to think about myself or what's going on. And Taylor just reminds me Nathan, that's not your heart. That's not who I know that you are. That's not your character. So that doesn't bother me at all. I know who you are, even if this person maybe doesn't, or they took this the wrong way, or whatever it might be. So it's really, really cool to have a partner that knows you truly better than you know yourself and can see things that you don't see about yourself, especially when I have myself in my own prison of expectation. I can't see anything outside of that, but she can speak in, and I can actually see what's really going on.
Yeah. Favorite Star Wars movie?
So this might divide the room. I don't know. We'll see. I would say my favorite Star Wars movie is Episode 7, Force Awakens. And the reason why is because I love where we're at technology-wise with movie and film and special effects and stuff. So I got to see the prequels come out as a young kid. I was super in love with Jar Jar Binks. It worked for me as an 11-year-old. I was like, Jar Jar Binks! I had a stuffed animal that never left my side of Jar Jar Binks. And now I look back and I'm like, who was that kid? Don't know what he was thinking. But I love Episode 7 because I feel like it was the first movie I got to see as an adult with opinions, and the special effects are so good that it was my Star Wars movie I'd been waiting for.
That's awesome.
What about you?
Mine's Episode 9.
Oh.
Divided. All right, so one last question. It's a little bit of a heavier one. As we know, depression, anxiety, suicide, epidemics in this generation. how do you speak hope into that kind of thing? Obviously, this is like a minute answer, so no pressure, but just how do you kind of encourage people dealing with that?
I was getting to give a message at our middle school chapel this past Thursday, and we're going through the book of Daniel. And in Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and he wakes up and he freaks out because he doesn't understand the dream. And he's like losing his mind. And so he summons all of his court officials. He gets all of his like wise men together and astrologers and interpreters. He's like, y'all need to tell me what this dream was and what it means, because I need to know. And they're like, all right, man, tell us what the dream was and we'll interpret it. And he's like, no, you tell me what the dream was and then interpret it for me, and then I'll know that you're legit. And they're like, who on earth could like possibly do that? How am I supposed to tell you like what you dreamed and then interpret it for you? Like nobody can do that. And literally the line in there is, they say no one on earth can do this except the gods, but they don't live among the humans. And so my title was Accept God. And the whole point is that in that situation for Nebuchadnezzar, the truth was nobody on earth could understand what he was going through. They couldn't understand what had happened to him. They couldn't understand what was going through his mind and what he saw, except for God. He was the only one, and they recognized that the only person that knew what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar was God himself. And so no matter what the circumstance, no matter what the situation, when you feel like you're not understood, or you feel like your mental battle is too strong, or you feel like you don't even get yourself, like whatever it is, there is an exception to the rule. If you feel alone, if you feel like nobody understands, the exception to the rule is God understands, and he's there, and he actually knows your mind better than you know your mind. And so I think the hope is that God understands. And I also find it interesting that what ends up happening is Nebuchadnezzar sends out word. He's like, all right, they can't tell me, so I'm going to kill everyone. Like, I'm going to kill all the wise men because I asked them to do this, and they didn't do it. So he sends out the word. They're trying to gather everybody up, and Daniel hears about it. And so he grabs Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he's like, y'all, we need to go pray, like now, because they're coming for us. And so they go pray, and in the night, God reveals to Daniel what the dream was and what it meant, because he's the exception to the rule, and he knows. But I find it so interesting that God didn't reveal it to Nebuchadnezzar. Like, he didn't tell him what his dream was, but he told it to Daniel. And I think why that's significant is because when we first meet Nebuchadnezzar, he worships other gods. The book of Daniel starts with like Nebuchadnezzar conquering God's people, and they take all the things out of God's temple and put it in Nebuchadnezzar's temple, because it's like, our God's better than your God kind of thing. But at the end of the story with Nebuchadnezzar, he actually trusts in the one true God. He gives his life to him. He praises him and worships him. And it's all because of his relationship with Daniel. And so the point being, God revealed it to Daniel because he wanted there to be a relationship between Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar. And so I think that in our mental battles, when we're questioning whether we have any kind of worth, when we're questioning whether or not we should be here, that in that moment, it's so important to know that God's the exception, that he actually knows and he actually cares and he actually has a reason for what's going on, but also that he wants us to talk to someone else about it. He wanted Daniel to talk to Nebuchadnezzar and have the conversation. So no matter what it is that you're going through, and I can see God has built such a cool community here, to just talk about it. You do not have to suffer in silence, but you can speak to somebody, even if you don't have answers, even if they don't have answers, just so that the weight can be lifted off and you can say, I'm going through this. And someone can be there and say, I hear you, and I'm here for you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Hey, can we give it up for Nathan and Taylor? There were a ton more questions. They'll have a couple minutes after this, so if you really wanted them to say 8 phrases from the anime world, like grab them. I did have a bunch more after. And there's some other really, really good questions. Just grab them afterwards. I'm going to pray for them for y'all. Yeah, feedback. If you guys have feedback, just what you thought of this, what you think about them, we'll send them all that information with your names on it. I'm just kidding. They won't see any of it. So we want your honest opinion, and just hear what you thought of this. It'll be recorded and sent to families too, or it is being recorded, and it will be sent to families. So yeah, we're eager to hear what you guys think. It's going to go viral. So you guys stretch out your hands. I'm just going to pray for them and for this process. God, thanks for Nathan and Taylor and just the story you're writing in their life. I just hear good and faithful servant over the last season of their life. And so, God, we pray that you'd open doors that no man can open, you shut doors that no man can shut, and just make it obvious. You light the path in front of us step by step. And so I pray you'd bless their obedience and their faithfulness, that you just make it clear for all of us. We thank you for this time and this visit, and just pray your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, grab another.